All right, today we're going to tackle a big one, data governance. Now I know, it sounds kind of complex, maybe even a little boring, but we're going to break it down and turn that buzzword into a practical playbook for building data systems that people can actually, trust. Let's get into it.
I mean, really think about that for a second. You could build the most incredible, insightful, beautiful dashboard, but if your boss or your client or your team even thinks the numbers might be off, it's completely useless. Trust is everything. It is the absolute foundation of any data product that has real value. So the big question we're asking today is your data truly trustworthy?
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the why data needs rules in the first place. Then we'll open up the governance playbook itself. After that, we'll talk about staying within the legal lines, weigh the risks versus the rewards, and we'll wrap up by showing you how to talk about all this like a total pro.
Okay, section 1. Why does data even need rules? To make this stuff stick and not just be a bunch of abstract concepts, we're going to use a single case study for this whole explainer. Let's imagine a food delivery app we'll call Hungry Now.
So let's put you in the driver's seat. You're a data engineer at Hungry Now. Your job is to build the brains of the operation. You're making recommendation engines so customers find food they love, you're building the KPI dashboards that tell the execs how the business is doing, and you're coding the GPS routing that gets drivers from the restaurant to the front door as fast as possible. Here's the deal, though. For anyone from the CEO to the customer to the driver to rely on what you've built, the data behind it all has to be governed. And that's not just about being accurate. It's the whole shebang. Is it protected? Are the right people seeing it? Are you keeping it for the right amount of time? And of course, are you following the law?
Okay, so how do we actually do this? That brings us to section 2, the governance playbook. Let's break down the core moves you need to make to get your data under control. First up, data policies and ownership. This is ground zero. Policies are just the rules of the road for how data gets handled. But, rules don't enforce themselves. That's where ownership comes in. You have to assign clear responsibility for certain data sets to a specific person or a team. Someone has to be on the hook.
For example, at Hungry Now, a policy could be super simple. All personal customer data must be anonymized before it's used for analytics, period. And to make sure that happens, the marketing manager is officially named the data owner for all campaign data. See? Clear rules, clear responsibility. All right, next play in the book, data access control. This is all about a really simple but powerful idea called the principle of least privilege. It just means that people should only have access to the bare minimum data they need to do their job and absolutely nothing more. Think about it. At Hungry Now, a driver, they definitely need to see a customer's address for their current delivery, but does someone on the finance team need to see that? No way. That's access control, plain and simple.
Okay, next up are two things that go hand in hand. Data quality and data lineage. Quality is all about defining what good data even looks like, making sure every address has a zip code, that sort of thing. And lineage? Well, that's the data's life story. It's a map that tracks where the data came from and every single stop it made along the way.
So let's trace it. A customer places a bunch of orders. Then an ETL process, that's extract, transform, load, kicks in and calculates a loyalty score based on that history. Finally, that shiny new score pops up on a marketing dashboard. That journey from raw order data to a finished KPI, that's its lineage.
And finally, we have data retention and classification. Classification is basically just tagging your data based on how sensitive it is. Is this public info or is it super secret? And then retention policies are like a ticking clock, defining exactly how long you're legally allowed to hold on to that data before you have to get rid of it.
Back at our app, Hungry Now, a customer's dietary needs, like a severe allergy, would absolutely be classified as sensitive data. It needs extra protection. Meanwhile, something like delivery logs might have a retention policy of, say, 2 years. After that, poof, they get automatically and permanently deleted. In that idea of retention policies, well, that leads us right into section 3, staying within the lines. Because these rules, they don't just come from nowhere. They're often dictated by some pretty major legal regulations. Now, you're going to run into a few big ones out there. You've got GDPR in Europe, which is huge for user rights and consent. Then there are global standards like PCI-DSS, which is non-negotiable if you're handling credit cards. They're all pieces of a larger puzzle for keeping information safe and secure. Look, the whole point of these regulations isn't to make your job harder. It's to force companies to build trust right into their systems from the very beginning. So if you remember one thing from this section, make it this mantra: least data, least privilege. Collect only what you need and grant access only when you must. So what actually happens when you get this right versus when you get it wrong? That brings us to Section 4, risks versus rewards. Let's look at the very real consequences of your choices.
I mean, the difference here is night and day. Without governance, you're flying blind. With bad data, you're risking massive fines, and your data sets can become a total mess. But with good governance, you're making smart, secure decisions, you can easily prove you're compliant, and the big one, you build real, lasting trust with your users.
All right, let's land the plane with our final section, Talk Like a Pro. This is all about taking these ideas and learning how to actually talk about them in a way that shows you know what you're doing. Check out this statement. This is so much stronger than just saying, I improved security. Why? Because it's specific. It names the tool, Power BI, it names the technique, row-level security, and it clearly states the outcome, restricting access. It shows you don't just understand the theory, you know how to put it into practice. Here's another killer example. This connects a specific technical action, building an automated job, directly to a critical business requirement, complying with GDPR. This tells everyone that you're not just a coder, you're a responsible professional who understands the bigger picture. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. Every single data set, every pipeline you write, every dashboard you build, it's all telling a story. And data governance is how you make sure that story is one of reliability, security, and most importantly, one of trust. And just a quick heads up, of course, everything we talked about here is for educational purposes. This is not legal advice. When it comes to your specific company, you should always consult with your data protection officer and your legal teams.